Good morning. I am Cherie Deslandes, Director of Corporate Services at the Caribbean Examinations Council. On behalf of the Council, management, and staff here at CXC headquarters in Barbados, at our Western Zone office in Jamaica, and in our extended network of temporary team members and partners across the length and breadth of the Caribbean, I offer a hearty welcome to our valued media stakeholders across the region to this important press conference. I am pleased to acknowledge our hardworking registrar and CEO, Dr. Wayne Wesley, from whom you will hear shortly. Dr. Wesley will be ably supported this morning by my colleagues, Executive Dr. Edward Ali, Co-Registrar and Deputy CEO, Dr. Nicole Manning, CXC's Director of Operations, as well as our Director of Technological Innovation, Mr. Rodney Payne. I am also pleased to acknowledge the presence of some of our senior managers and other members of the CXC family who are keeping good company with the members of the Barbadian Media and UWTV who have joined us as a media engagement event in person this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, CXC is also pleased to welcome some high-level stakeholders with us today. From the government of Anguilla, we have the Honorable Sheila Rogers-Webster, the new Minister of Social Development, Education and Library, Youth and Culture. And with her, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Social Development and Education in Anguilla, Dr. Bonnie Richardson Lake. We are indeed delighted to have the Minister and the Permanent Secretary with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, today, like most days, is a busy one for CXC. As we meet hundreds of students from across the region are engaged in oral examinations in the modern languages, French, Spanish, and Portuguese. In the traditional run-up to the start of the May-June 2025 examinations, Dr. Wesley will provide further details about this examination session and some exciting initiatives within the framework of CXC's strategic imperatives and goals. Dr. Wesley, over to you.
Thank you very much, Cherie. And let me first start by extending my own welcome to all present, and in particular, the media houses that are present, both in person and online. It is indeed a delight to have you here with us to share on what CXC has been doing and how we are seeking to reposition ourselves for greater regional impact. Today, we want to talk to you about CXC's duty of care, the underpinning philosophy and ethos governing how we are recognizing and improving our operational processes and efficiencies to deliver higher levels of customer service to every CXC stakeholder. And here, I define CXC stakeholders as our students, candidates, parents, teachers, educators, policymakers, administrators, regional governments, employers, churches, civil society groups, and just about every individual or organization engaged in the development and preparation of people to be the best version of themselves and add value to the Caribbean life and society. Today, April 15, marks the official start of the traditional May-June examinations with the customary oral examinations in the modern foreign languages such as Spanish, French, and Portuguese. We are pleased to announce that for this 2025 examination period, over 100,000 candidates from across the region have been registered to sit more than 600,000 subject entries. This will be another mammoth undertaking by CXC, but we are equal to the task. The team has worked hard to ensure that everything is in place for the successful administration of the examinations. I would like to extend my commendation to everyone, particularly the Examination Services Division under the leadership of Dr. Nicole Manning, and who will later provide us with valuable insights into the planning and implementation for these regional examinations. CXC remains the preeminent examinations, assessment, and awarding body of the Caribbean. As the regional standard, we are gratified by the widespread international recognition and acceptance of CXC certification for admission into higher education institutions. As we enter the May-June examination cycle, allow me on behalf of the Board of Governors, management, and staff of the Caribbean Examinations Council to offer my best wishes to all candidates. This is the culmination of many months of sacrifice, learning, study, and preparation. I encourage all our candidates to apply themselves and to give their best efforts. As you approach these examinations, remember to be cool, to be calm, and to be confident that your preparation will take you through. You've got this. As we continue to execute our digital transformation strategy, specifically as it relates to electronic assessment, kindly note that effective January 2026, all examination administered in the January sessions will be offered electronically, either as e-assessment or hybrid e-assessment. In situations where candidates are unable to write the examinations electronically, they will be accommodated in the May-June sessions, where both paper-based and e-assessment will be administered. Dr. Manning will provide more details on the e-assessment and hybrid e-assessment strategy of the Council. CXC is repositioning. The strategic repositioning of CXC marks the beginning of our transformation effort. And I want to say at this time that this is the beginning of the end of the Caribbean Examinations Council as you know it, as we transform for greater regional impact. As the unique certifying body for secondary education within the Caribbean community, CXC is seized with the imperative to engage in its own organization renewal and reorganization to provide the required leadership and support for education transformation in the region. Since December 2023, CXC has been engaged in a comprehensive strategic repositioning exercise in what is the beginning of the end of the old CXC. This comprehensive strategic repositioning is about transforming for greater relevance and sustainability. It encompasses three main components as follows: the modernization of our governance system, which involves a review of CXC's Article of Agreement to include expanded stakeholder representation, enhanced accountability structures, relevant expertise and prudent oversight, and appropriate board organs committee created to ensure adherence to policy mandates. Secondly, organizational redesign. This speaks to redesigning within a resilient construct to make CXC fit for purpose in carrying out its duty of care to the regional education system. What this means is a CXC transforming for greater relevance, sustainability to achieve organizational agility, where we are seeking to respond swiftly and effectively to unpredictable events, operational flexibility, where we are being responsive to the needs of stakeholders and efficiently managing our resources. And finally, institutional capability, developing robust governance framework and enhancing human capacity to be able to treat with the many challenges that we must face together. The third element of the repositioning strategy is that of reimagining assessment and certification. This calls for the recalibration and refocus of the Council's system of assessment and certification, embracing flexible and progressive learning and competency-based education in alignment with economic and social transformation. And you might be wondering, how will CXC be doing this? Well, first of all, we will be emphasizing the acquisition of skills and competencies, social, behavioral, and cultural, as well as using prior learning assessment in recognizing the competencies students and candidates have achieved. Secondly, we will be redesigning our qualifications to achieve optimal balance between content coverage and the acquisition of skills through the various approaches, including signaling of current and future employment and skills demands, as well as the modularization of syllabuses. And I want to pause here because this is a new development in CXC as we seek to become more flexible and responsive to the needs of the region. And so a new qualification has been developed, and perhaps I should share with you that presentation. A new qualification has been developed, and within this construct, the learner is at the focus of what we are treating with. And as you can see, we'll be dealing with the learning style of the individual, the learning rate, and the learning depth. How students learn, the pace at which they learn, and the amount of content that they can absorb at any one time. In that regard, we have recognized that there are multiple options. You have advanced gifted students who can take the accelerated track and those who can do so through a compressed program. We also recognize that there are students, the typical students who will take the general track, completing a program in a specified period of time, as in most of our syllabuses, 2 years. And then you have the individualized individual who will need a flexible track and extended program time to treat with and absorb the content needed. So in recognizing the three components of the learner, the style, the rate, and the content, and understanding that we need to provide a pathway for all students to achieve their full potential, the advanced, typical, and individualized approach options will provide a greater level of flexibility for the system. So what is this new qualification CXC is coming out with? It is our qualification that currently will be at the same standard of CTEC and CAPE. It will be utilizing the same syllabus. It will focus on related and relevant learning outcomes, as well as providing for the progressive achievement of competencies. And of course, non-terminal, and hence the progressive nature of the syllabus. This new qualification is what we call the Caribbean Targeted Education Certificate, CTEC. This CTEC, along with the suite of credentials that we offer, will be our micro-credential and will be awarded to students who successfully achieve a module. Then this will lead up into our intermediate credential, which you're already familiar with, our CTEC and CAPE, which will be awarded to those who achieve a defined set of modules for a subject or the full subject going forward, as well as our macro credential. I know our macro credential is not as familiar to the public because it is really something that is offered to students who have completed a certain number of CAPE and a certain number of CSEC subjects. If you complete certain cognate subjects or units within CXC SEC, you can get a certificate or a diploma. If you complete certain number of CAPE units, you can actually be awarded an associate degree. So there is continuity from the micro credential to the intermediate to the macro, and students will have several opportunities to achieve that pathway. The approaches to CTEC will be subject-based, and this will be assessment based on the syllabus qualifications that we offer, and it is discipline-specific. Or CTEC will be skills-based approach, where assessment will be based on competencies achieved through real-life scenarios and situations, and this will be contextual. So a lot more flexibility will be available to students in achieving and demonstrating the level of competencies acquired. So we have started this process with both English and mathematics, and just to say that the modularization of English and mathematics will be done across 3 modules, and each module will be assessed independently, and the combination of those 3 modules will provide for the award of the full certification. So for example, in mathematics, CTEC award module 1 will be achieved by a student at any point throughout their study. 2, 3, and all of that come together to give you the full CTEC mathematics qualification. So a combination of all 3 modules will give. This will add a great level of flexibility to the teaching, learning, and assessment process, because now a student, if you for some reason have to leave school for any particular reason, you can re-engage the system based on what module you have already completed. So you don't have to start the entire CSEC syllabus all over again. You can, if you exit with module 1, you can re-engage the system at module 2 and module 3 and obtain your full certification. All of this will add a lot of flexibility because a student studying engineering can now take a module in the business subject, let's say in entrepreneurship, because he's interested in starting his own business after completing the program. So a lot of flexibility will be achieved through this. The implementation timeline, a lot of work has happened already, and the team will start the pilot of this CTEC project, CTEC certification in September 2025, and the first certificate will actually be awarded in 2026 when the first set of candidates will be writing that examination. Ladies and gentlemen, the CTEC outcomes offer several benefits: that of a better equipped workforce, cluster of related and relevant competencies that students ought to acquire, the validation of progress and achievement as they progress through the school system, employment and/or matriculation, as well as maintaining the same standard of the qualification, catering to individualized goals. The next area is expanding the assessment and recognition framework through the development of our product innovation model as a robust quality assurance process for certification, for validation of certification. And Dr. Eduardo Ali will actually provide you with more information on that. We have also developed CXC's longitudinal framework to systematically address seamlessly educational challenges from primary to secondary or tertiary education. And as presented on the screen there for you, it is CXC longitudinal framework, starting first from the primary level, seeking to ensure that we have a balance in our curriculum where literacy and numeracy becomes a critical focus. And what we are saying, we should not, while it is important for students to be rounded, it should not be at the expense of being literate and numerate. And we are calling for a rebalancing of the core and social curriculum to ensure that this is emphasized. At the lower secondary level, CXC has embarked on developing literacy and numeracy standards, which will be incorporated with our AI technology to ensure we can provide assistance. It will be complementary to the secondary education system, particularly from grade 7 to 8. Then, 7 to 9 rather, then we will move to the upper part of the secondary system where the modularized CTEC program will be advanced, as well as at the post-secondary for CAPE, where CTEC, again modularized, will be advanced. And all of this will culminate at the end with a research and education conference that will seek for the teachers' capacity development through our Professional Learning Institute, PLI, as well as working with institutions like universities across the region for research facilitation to help improve what happens within the school system. So CXC Longitudinal Framework is grounded within a solid research methodology that will see us tracking students from the primary level all the way to the post-secondary level and beginning to understand what are those factors that are influencing the performance of students and begin to devise strategies and deliberate interventions to address those weaknesses. Ladies and gentlemen, that represents our longitudinal framework. And today, we will be talking about embracing artificial intelligence as an important advancement of digitalized educational systems that allow for the development of critical and complex competencies not possible with traditional manual or paper-based approaches. And of course, Mr. Rodney Payne will provide you with details on that. This repositioning strategy aims to enhance our regional impact and global influence, ensuring the provision of relevant and high-quality educational services. Ladies and gentlemen, much is expected of CXC, and we will not shrink back in what we have to do, but instead, we will move courageously and boldly in shaping and transforming education within the region. And in order to be successful, we know we will have to listen more to our stakeholders. This is a defining posture of the new CXC. We will listen, we will engage and work with all our stakeholders, our parents, our students, our governments, policymakers, teachers, educators, and all our regional and international partners for greater regional impact, influencing while attaining higher levels of global relevance. There is much more to say, but I will pause here. For my colleagues will expand further on some of these points that I have raised. I thank you for your attention, and I now hand back to Sherry Deslandes.
Thank you, Dr. Wesley, for that content-rich presentation, which captured the wide scope of CXC's duty of care to our region. Let us now hear from our Director of Technological Innovation, Mr. Rodney Payne, who has played a pivotal role in the design of CXC's AI policy framework for the regional secondary educational system. Mr. Payne.
Thank you, Sherry. Good morning, all. Today, I'm going to rely on the voice-activated clicker as I share presentation with Dr. Ali. So we're speaking about the regional framework for adoption of AI in education. Next. And that is strategically positioned to lead to improvements overall. You heard Dr. Wesley present the transformational agenda that CXC has, and utilizing technology, it is the intention for CXC to support acceleration of advancing regional development. It's not just about certification, but it's about certification for advancing regional development. Next. We did some data collection in December last year, and it hasn't changed significantly between then and now. Nearly 70% of our member states don't have a formal AI policy or framework in place. For us to benefit as a region, we need a harmonious development utilizing the technologies across the board. It's not going to help us if one state moves ahead quickly and the others are struggling to follow, because CXC's exams are not territorial. They're not located in one member state. All must benefit from the intervention. Hence, the lack of policy, the lack of framework required some intervention, and CXC position in the secondary education system has led that charge. So the idea behind the framework is not prescriptive in nature. It provides guidance so that we can adapt as the technology changes. It's to facilitate harmony. Each member state, each set of candidates should have an equal opportunity to benefit from the technologies that are available. And we give some general guidelines embodied in 10 policy statements that will support development within territory. At whichever level you are, you can participate and advance that agenda. Next. So it's people focus. Responsible AI is to ensure the human in the conversation is leveraging the technology, not the technology driving the expected outcome. Harmonization of policy. Next. Ensuring there's a responsible use. Next. Monitoring the outcomes, policy prescriptions, and evaluating those policy prescriptions to ensure the expected benefit is being realized by all parties concerned. Next. There are 10 elements: preserving academic integrity, ethical inclusion, curriculum integration, teacher training, professional development, data privacy, infrastructure. We must recognize for this to work, infrastructure needs to get to the last mile. Students, teachers, parents need to be involved. And it's not just about getting it to the school. If you're taking homework, if you're doing SBA and you're doing self-driven development, you need to be able to do it from home, from school, wherever you can participate. I think of broadband as a public utility in the same way we think of electricity and water and now mobile data on smartphones. Assessment, we have already started to incorporate some of those tools in our assessment process. And as I said earlier, it's all about keeping the human, keeping the teacher, keeping the parent, keeping the student, who we refer to as candidates, at the center of this use of technology. It's not technology for technology's sake. It's technology to ensure that that development impact is being felt across the entire region. Okay. So I'll highlight one of those elements of the framework, preserving academic integrity. When we think of the use of AI and we think of the use of ChatGPT, does the student not take responsibility for the work generated? And our framework is anchored in that personal responsibility. It's not sufficient to say the machine did it. The machine may help you to do it, but in order to preserve academic integrity, honesty, originality, respect, fairness, accountability are all key elements that are embodied in the policy frame. Dr. Ali? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Payne. So as was indicated, our arrangement is one that is built on effective partnerships. CXC works with regional and global partners to advance our strategy. And so where the AI policy framework is concerned, this represents an opportunity for the Caribbean Examinations Council to engage with regional partners, notably governments, to help strengthen their own capacity to respond to the needs of the region, and more specifically, their own national context, where students, as was indicated, are engaged in utilization of AI, where teachers have to be prepared to work with students to engage them in the use of AI, where administrators of schools and others are also to be ready to respond to these technological changes. And so it is important for us to recognize that this is a collaborative effort between the governments of the region and the Caribbean Examinations Council as we work together to strengthen the applications of artificial intelligence, most notably generative artificial intelligence, in the response to what students are facing in the teaching, learning, and assessment environment. So in our collaborative efforts, CXC, as we engage, work with the governments to support them through their efforts to strengthen their own national policies if they exist, or to develop new policies where they don't exist. And so in that regard, we have established the regional policy framework with principles, guidelines, and standards. Some of those standards relate to assessment, which you will hear from Dr. Manning later today, that are used in the response at the nation state level or the member state level. CXC has prepared a draft MOU, which we have been working with various member states on to understand, to utilize, and to assist them in working collaboratively with us. And so each member state would have had to review and to consider our draft memorandum of understanding as the cooperation arrangement by which we collaborate on this initiative. And so in that whole construct, CXC provides guidance to the member state as they consider what changes are needed within their own policy architecture. And so they respond to those requirements for change, whether it may be the policy itself that needs change, or the education plan, sector plan that needs change, or any other part of the system that requires change. We engage in providing consultative advice from a technical standpoint. And to do that, we've formed a policy group within CXC that is strategically positioned to help member states as they work through that process. And so we provide technical ideas and suggestions, and those technical ideas and suggestions are considered by the member states as they proceed. And we provide some level of monitoring and review of what the ministry is doing to ensure that there's harmonization with CXC's models and approaches and integration across the region, so that what is done, as you've heard Mr. Payne mention, in one territory is not fundamentally different from another. Yes, there will be nuances within each country that we have to accept, but as a regional organization interfacing with governments across the region who form part of our structure and the ecosystem, we have to ensure that that is addressed so that we could facilitate their progress and the development of their policy. So what are the intended outcomes for CXC as it relates to working with our partners? And the first of I mentioned is having this memorandum of understanding supported by governments. And so I'm happy to report that today you will see one of our key partners, the government of Anguilla, who will be engaged with us in signing our first memorandum of understanding to facilitate this cooperative arrangement between the government of Anguilla and CXC as it relates to this collaborative venture. We also have to remember, as I've indicated before, that students are at the center of all of this. And so one of our critical outcomes is ensuring that students, as they get access to and they utilize artificial intelligence, particularly generative artificial intelligence, that they use it responsibly, that they use it ethically, and that they know how to use it for their own learning and development and not for any nefarious purposes. Students also, we want to ensure that their capabilities of utilizing artificial intelligence will be improved, because we realize, as you've heard Mr. Payne mentioned, the sophistication of AI is rapidly becoming something that we've seen, where day in, day out, there are new technologies being embraced. There are new ways of how to use artificial intelligence for teaching and learning and for formative assessment as well. Dr. Manning will reference some of that later on. So ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce to you at this point the Honorable the Honorable Dr. Bonnie Richardson Lake, who is the Permanent Secretary for Social Development and Education and in the Ministry of Social Development in Anguilla, and Dr. Wayne Wesley, our registrar, who will be taking us through the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding at this point. And they will do this by each signing a copy of the Memorandum of Understanding, after which the two individuals will then display their signed copies for a photo op for members of the media who are graciously here with us or those online to be so engaged. So ladies and gentlemen, I introduce Dr. Wesley and Dr. Richardson Lake, who will now take us through that segment. Thank you. Dr. Lake.
Yes, good morning.
So would you like to perhaps start by giving us a few remarks before you?
I can absolutely do that. Thank
you
you very much, Dr. Ali. I think this MOU is really very important for Anguilla. It really signals a shared commitment to shaping a future where education remains relevant, responsible, and aligned with technological advancement. The CXC Responsible Generative AI Policy Framework is a timely and necessary guide as we navigate the growing influence of artificial intelligence in teaching, learning, and in assessment. Generative AI holds tremendous potential to enrich the educational experience, personalizing learning, supporting educators, and expanding access to knowledge. But with this promise comes responsibility. We must ensure that the use of AI in education is underpinned by fairness, equity, transparency, and very importantly, and I think the previous speaker would have mentioned this, human oversight. We can't remove the humanity from all of this. So that is a really important element. Through this partnership, we look forward to building local capacity, strengthening policy and practice, and supporting our students and teachers to confidently and responsibly engage with this evolving technology. We in Anguilla do not yet have an AI policy, but we look forward to working with the CXC and using the policy framework that they've developed to guide our national policy. We commend the CXC for its leadership on this regional initiative and reaffirm the ministry's dedication to fostering innovation while safeguarding the values that lie at the heart of education. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Payne, for so ably breaking down the components of the AI policy framework. Thank you, Dr. Ali. Thank you, Minister Rogers, Webster, and PS Richardson Lake. Now, to take us a little deeper into the important CXC initiative designed to profoundly impact the learning and assessment process in our schools across the Caribbean. Dr. Wesley, are you ready to do the signing?
Yes,
Okay.
Just a minute there, we're having
A break in transition.
a little connectivity. Well, I guess I'm on screen. Yeah, we can go ahead. Dr. Richardson Lake?
Sir?
Yes, of course, I do appreciate the government of Anguilla joining with the Caribbean Examinations Council to facilitate the development of your own national policy, as our policy framework will provide guidance to that process. And we are indeed happy to see that you have taken the step to advance your own national policy as it relates to digital transformation within the education system of Anguilla. So at this time, we will sign. You have yours, I have mine.
I
We
have
are
mine.
side and side by technology. And
Yes.
so I'll ask AI to sign mine while you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wesley and Dr. Richardson Lake, for taking us through a very important activity. And we are indeed grateful to the government of Anguilla for doing so. Dr. Richardson Lake, we would like you to introduce your new minister to us. This is a regional setting, and I'm sure everyone is excited to meet the Honorable Rogers Webster. And so please introduce your minister, and then she would say a few remarks. Thank you.
Yes. Good morning, Minister. We have with us Minister Shelia Rogers Webster, who is the newly elected Minister of Social Development and Education, who was elected this year on February 26th. So we welcome her and we will hear from her. Over to you, Minister.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so very much, Doc, for that warm welcome, and to the entire team on this panel for your warm welcome. It certainly is a pleasure to be here to represent Anguilla, and it's such a timely MOU agreement being signed. Anguilla has been seeking to position itself as one of the AI capitals of the world, particularly having the advantage of having .ai as our domain name. And so we have been seeking to really not just position ourselves from a tourism perspective, but also from an education perspective. And we understand it is critically important for our population to be able to start integrating AI into our education system. So I think this move that CXC is making is not only timely, but it's quite innovative, it's necessary, and I think it really provides a shared opportunity for us to leverage our shared resources to be able to prepare our people for the future. So it really is a pleasure and an amazing opportunity for Anguilla to be a part of this. We thank you for the opportunity, and we look forward to a continued, long-lasting, productive, and mutually beneficial relationship between Anguilla and CXC. So thank you so very much.
Introduce me.
Thank you very much, Minister Roger Webster and PS Richardson Lake. Now, to take us a little deeper into the important CXC initiative designed to profoundly impact the learning and assessment process in our schools across the Caribbean, I will now invite Dr. Edward Ali, who leads the CXC Research and Educational Development Division, to speak more about AI policy framework and how this connects with our stakeholders from Anguilla. Dr. Ali?
Well, thank you very much, Mrs. Deslandes. Just to indicate, as was mentioned by the Honorable Minister, our relationship will take many different iterations. We first have signed the MOU, and thereafter, what we will do is have our technical teams work through the interventions. That will require consultations. It will require our teams to work directly with the government of Anguilla and their team that they have established to translate the AI policy framework that you've just heard of, to ensure that there's an understanding of what is required on their end and for them to continue with the development process. CXC is not involved in the development of the AI policy at the national level, but we provide sound guidance and support to the member state so that they can do it responsibly as they work to implement responsible generative AI policy for their country. So that is the next step, and we look forward to that partnership, as was mentioned, to further those initiatives. What I will do now is make reference to CXC products. Dr. Wesley, in his remarks, would have made reference to three fundamental things. One of which refers to the advancement of a skills agenda that CXC has been embracing, the design of new qualifications and how those are structured within our broader remit of qualifications at CXC, and CXC's attempts to reposition itself within the regional landscape. More specifically, as we work with each member state, we recognize that we have been working regionally with products that are regional, but we have to facilitate what member states want in their own jurisdictions or countries. So I will be speaking to how we embrace member states from a national perspective as we work with our products in the region. So first of all, let me say, as was mentioned by the registrar, we recognize that we have to be responsive. And that responsiveness means that we need to understand what each member state requires in terms of its educational demand, its educational offerings, and to work with them to cultivate an environment where there's shared collaboration as we engage in working through the landscape of the respective country. And that does not only mean ensuring that we advise the country to formulate their own national policies and to strengthen their own national policies, but to also develop qualifications that are responsive within the markets that we work with. We also have to ensure that whatever we are doing meets the requirements of the labor market. Dr. Wesley would have elaborated on the fact that we are focused on identifying the skills that the region needs now, but the skills that the region needs for the future. CXC has been foresighting and futurizing. And in that approach, our focus is to ensure that as we look at educational offerings now, we also predict what educational offerings will look like in the years ahead. And for that, we have actually started a process of looking at what 2050 would look like and back casting to the reality that we now face. So to the extent to which our region will be responsive to the global demands. We have also recognized as the workforce changes and the requirements change, not just with respect to AI, but generally with respect to skills across all industries, CXC needs to take cognizance of those skills and those occupational clusters and jobs that are emerging in the future, and to work with those to position our skills and our future graduates or future candidates in the regional and global context for which they face, which is changing. Dr. Wesley would have also mentioned the macro, intermediate, and micro. CXC has what we call a differentiated system of qualifications. What does that mean? It means we have qualifications for everyone. It means whether you are in primary education or you are in post-secondary education or in between, there is something there for you, something there for each learner to access, progressively move from level to level, acquiring their skills and qualifications or credentials as they proceed to be able to advance to the labor market so that they're employable, but at the same time, they could further their education wherever those opportunities exist. And we are working with higher education institutions across the region to facilitate what we call equivalencies and matriculation. Basically, that means whatever is offered by a university, a college, a vocational institution, CXC has to ensure that our offerings could match up to those, but at the same time provide the requisite opportunities for students to move seamlessly into those qualifications that are offered. And so the variety that you've heard represents that kind of arrangement, ensuring that every learner will access a credential that would allow them to matriculate or to enter into another institution of choice. We also recognize, as was mentioned, that our credentials must be credit-based. And so we've started issuing credits aligned to all of our credentials, or our qualifications, to facilitate learners to have something that could allow them to matriculate, as I mentioned, into other institutions to advance, and therefore provides an opportunity for international recognition. One of the things that we've recognized is international higher education institutions and schools within jurisdictions in Europe, for example, and North America typically have credit-based systems. And so if they have credits that are aligned to what we offer, it becomes easier for them to review and accept our candidates for entry into those institutions in those particular scenarios. CXC also has been focusing on creating what we call joint awards and strengthening national curricula for global and regional acceptance. And I'm going to speak to that in a moment because it's important for us to appreciate what we are doing in that regard. So we are redesigning our qualifications where we see skills and competencies being at the forefront of every learner, given where they need to be in the future. And so to do this, we have developed another framework called the CXC Skills and Competencies Framework that really helps in allowing for teachers to teach well, for students to learn well, and for CXC as an assessment body to assess well. And so this skills and competency framework is predicated on what we call 5 thematic areas of skills. They are critical and innovative thinking, global citizenship, digital literacy, personal awareness, health and management of self, and understanding self and others. These 5 core areas are aligned to the regional constructs that have been determined by CARICOM and the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. So we know they're aligned with what the region needs. They're aligned to the 21st century skills that are required for learners. And they're also aligned to the UNESCO and the Commonwealth frameworks for teaching, learning, and assessment. So for us, each of those 5 areas are further delineated into what we call sub-themes. You have, for example, for critical and innovative thinking, 3 broad sub-themes within which other skills are embedded. These include critical thinking, problem solving, and creativity and innovation. And I will pause to say here that if anyone is familiar with what the World Economic Forum has been looking at in terms of global skills, these 3 are the most critical skills that they've identified for the 21st century. In fact, they've not only predicted that those skills were needed for 2020 and 2025, but their latest survey demonstrates that these skills are even more needed for 2030, as we think also about digital literacy and the implications for AI, as was mentioned earlier. So within each of those 3 sub-themes, as I referenced them, if you look at critical thinking, problem solving, and creativity and innovation, for example, we have delineated levels below where we have skills and sub-skills. But we've gone even further. We've identified what we call observable behaviors. These observable behaviors, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, are actually those behaviors you want to see in a child, in a young person, as they're engaging with the curriculum in their schools, as they're engaging with CXC's qualifications to acquire what is needed in relation to all of these skills that we've addressed. So if you think about it, we have several layers of skills and sub-skills. In fact, we have over 239 sub-skills that we have developed and we've identified, and we've been working with the observable behaviors for all of them. And those are now going to be integrated into every micro-credential you've heard referenced with CTEC, macro-credential or the intermediate credential. Now, the intermediate qualification that was referenced is actually the subject that the student takes at any level for CSEC, for example, or for CAPE, for which units are acquired as it relates to CAPE or otherwise. And so it's important for us to recognize that as we rework all our syllabuses, which are designed at the intermediate qualification level, you will see all the students being exposed to whether they're getting a micro-credential through the modular approach that was referenced by Dr. Wesley, or otherwise, those skills being embedded, those skills being learned, and those skills being assessed. And so when we certify, we are guaranteed to certify individuals who would have skills that are ready for the workforce, but are ready for adaptivity in a civil society, including further education. Now, CXC has also introduced what we call the product innovation model. And to simply put, this is really where we have different types of qualifications leveled for different purposes, whether they're at the regional level or at the national level. So the reality is CXC works within a marketplace. There's competition regionally, there's competition globally. And so we have to be responsive. We have to be market conscious. And so in our design, we've actually considered what this will look like for the region to penetrate the market in defined ways. And so we have what is called the classic innovation, which is essentially a regional product designed for regional use or consumption. That is basically saying CSEC, CAPE, CTEC, as the associate degree, are regionally developed by CXC for regional use. And that is our classic product. We also have what we call hybrid and proxy. And basically the difference has to do with how we respond to the nation state when they are interested in working with us. For CXC being a recognized body in the region by governments, but also internationally recognized to bring that brand to the country at the national level. So the hybrid innovation is really where we work together and we say in a partnership, this is what we can offer you in terms of a part of a credential or a part of a qualification. And we'll work with what they have and we design it, co-design it together to deliver what is required for the country. In the proxy innovation approach, which we refer to it as, CXC has established our skills and competency framework, which I mentioned before. So we work with the country to assess or evaluate what they have in their country's curriculum to determine the level at which it is aligned to our standards. And where there is full alignment, we know they're complementary. Where there's not full alignment, there's an opportunity for us to strengthen the system. We validate what they do, we quality assure what they do, but we can also assist in building the capacity of what is required and facilitate the assessment as well of what is required in country to respond. So the certifications that are offered can also be offered by a country with a CXC brand to it that says this is regionally certified or this is regionally attested or validated. And what is being offered in a country is therefore of a regional value. What I want to say here is that CXC was established on the basis of being relevant to the region, relevant to the CARICOM single market and economy. And the CARICOM single market and economy, ladies and gentlemen, is designed for mobility across the region. So all our efforts, whether they are regional products that we've developed using the classic approach or they're any other, provides every country, every member state with an opportunity to have what they are doing validated and quality assured by CXC, to say that CXC has put its stamp of approval and its quality mark on your product to verify that it is being done in accordance with regional standards for skills, but regional standards for quality assurance of what is done from an assessments perspective. And therefore, every single country now has an opportunity to say that our graduates who've left our school system at the national level could now move seamlessly, going back to the points Dr. Wesley made about seamless movement, progression, can seamlessly move across the region from country to country to facilitate a wonderful single market and economy that we've all been working so hard to have established in our region. So ladies and gentlemen, that is the proxy and hybrid innovation model and the classic approach. And this is the differentiation with which we are working with all of our products across the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ali, for that detailed presentation. Let us now turn our attention to Dr. Nicole Manning, who is no stranger to the media. Dr. Manning will have much to share on the preparation for examinations with some guidance to our candidates and about the standards and guidelines for use of AI in CXC's assessment. Dr. Manning?
Thank you very much, Mrs. Deslandes. Good morning, everyone. And as it would have been stated, we just go straight to the 5 facts that is necessary for us to move for the May-June 2025, as well as the January 2026, all the way through. Let me just make sure I'm in presentation mode. Okay, great. So yes, as we proceed, we are looking at the 2025 May-June examinations. And as was mentioned, we had a revision of our regulations, the future of e-assessment, what does that look like? And of course, in line with the AI policy framework spoken of just now, the CXC would have created standards and guidelines for the use of AI in assessment. Last but not least, we spoke about the development of our educational professionals across the region. And very importantly, we will get into a little brief on the Regional Educational Conference that CXC is planning. Let me start firstly with our May-June 2025 exams. Examinations, as Dr. Wesley would have mentioned, commences today with the modern languages, the orals that we, as we more commonly call it, for both CTEC and CAPE, and examinations for CTEC proceed and completes. It commences for CTEC on the 1st of May, 2025 for the written exams, both CTEC and CAPE, but ends for CTEC on the 6th of June, 2025, and on the 11th of June, 2025 for CAPE. Of course, first and foremost, and very importantly for the team at the Caribbean Examinations Council, it's not only the administration, the marking, the grading, but of course, the release of results. We work with many key functional partners in getting this done, our ministries of education, particularly our local registrars. We have a local registrar in each territory. Our teachers, parents, and guardians who, of course, would have been working tirelessly with the candidates to ensure their preparation, even as they start the orals and move on through to the written examinations. Higher education professionals and our private sector cannot be excluded. We work with the education ecosystem and we partner with them to deliver this value. And as you're seeing on screen, particularly, we deal with the administration through our ministries of education. So the actual hands and feet on the ground is managed in collaboration with the ministries of education through our local registrar offices. Then that cannot be done without the private sector or internet service providers. We spoke much about the electronic assessment. We need stable and reliable service in order to do that. Marking and grading. Marking, I would assume that you know by now, but let's just say that the teaching professionals are a very key component of what we do with marking. All our teachers are involved in marking and moderation. They are very important over that June-July period where we try to get everything done for all these thousands of candidates and the over 600,000 of subject entries mentioned by Dr. Wesley. Last but not least, in order for us to develop the global certification, the higher education professionals at the tertiary level work with us to do the marking and grading that's required. I did mention the revised regulations, and this policy document, I'm just sharing with you a physical copy also, actually provides that the governing CXC's requirement for the conduct of examinations. What updates? Just to share some key ones: electronic assessment, AI, shifting how we are doing examinations. And all of that is being communicated in the students' timetables and of course the guidelines. Let me pause by saying we will be doing a further discussion and we'll be having our virtual town hall on the Thursday, 24th of April to do further discussions where this is concerned. I'm sorry. Okay, is that me? Okay, sorry. Okay, so this town hall will be a virtual town hall, and we are encouraging candidates, their parents and guardians to join. We will be starting 5 p.m. Barbados time, 6 p.m. Jamaica time, but I must add that we do have several other groups of territories. Belize, for example, it will be 4 p.m. So we have presented all 3 areas on screen. Our commitment, CXC, is to deliver on-time quality results. And in collaboration with our partners, we are going to be doing this for the May-June examinations. I move to provide the further information regarding January 2026. This session, where we will be having our electronic assessments and the hybrid e-assessment for the entire period. Let me start by saying, first of all, that as presented on screen is our CXC's digital transformation strategy. This strategy has 8 components, which starts from electronic learning all the way through to the release of e-results. Last year, 2024, May, June, you would have realized that we released results, using the electronic pre-slips. Those electronic pre-slips is just one evidence of our move in this direction. It was well received, and the candidates and their parents were able to utilize the information to move quickly into for matriculation, for employment, and for all the other areas that's so critical for them. Likewise, we're using the facilities that we have built, the robust facilities, to do the same thing for electronic assessment. And so, as we would have commenced and moving even further in a deliberate way for January 2026, we will be utilizing all the mechanisms to do that. Let me just give you a little bit more insight. Along with our local registrars, we'll be doing general sensitization all the way through to October, because that's when registration ends for January 2026. And we want to, just to kind of give a little background, why did we introduce this hybrid e-assessment and what exactly is it? One, we had heightened concerns over security of our examinations. We would have had calls from the public for CXC's response to security issues regarding the breaches that you would have seen in 2022 and 2023. So the hybrid e-assessment presents an opportunity for the separation of the question paper, as you know it, from the answer booklet. And this is what it looks like. The question paper appears on the screen, and the candidates have the answer booklet where they provide their responses, in which they provide their responses. Let us get a little deeper. Candidates access the examination online. They are provided with a key code that is entered, and this is what it looks like for the candidate. So we are giving you a real insight of what it looks like. The candidate gets a confirmation window, moves on to get introduction to the platform, moving straight into their examinations. They can download the PDF as well as they can do the examinations online. CXC is ensuring that there is stability and assurance where the candidates are concerned in where the exam is concerned, even if you have internet disturbance. So whether they view online or otherwise, candidates will be fine in doing their examinations. CXC has created and continue to create specimen papers, but particularly for the hybrid e-assessment, ensure that candidates can have their own experience at their own leisure, whether at school or in their own homes. So yes, we have a policy framework. Yes, we are doing the national policies, as we would have seen evidence through that MOU agreement signed just now. But of course, CXC has to create standards and guidelines to hit the ground as it exists for the use of AI in assessments. This is done in line with the policy framework, and the standards are ethical use of AI and academic integrity. For this, we are particularly looking at what happens in terms of the candidates even citing referencing in their SBAs and everything that they do, the actual use of AI, ensuring data and data privacy and security. Some territories already have, like we would have seen in our global context, data privacy laws. And CXC takes this very seriously and encourages, through the development of our standards, the proper use of personal information. Candidates must understand, must share, and must be cognizant, along with their parents, the careful use of personal identification on the web. And so CXC is highlighting the need for that. The designing and development of assessments, even in your own space, it's important that we understand that it would not be business as usual. Because with AI, you allow a candidate just a question, they go home, and they can actually just provide a response from AI. Let's understand that it is going to require higher order thinking, more performance-based type assessment. And CXC is coming along with you by providing these guidelines. And this third standard being the designing and development of assessments, evaluating those assessment processes and products, and ensuring that we maintain the measurement principles in item development and assessment development. As CXC applies these standards to our own processes, we are expecting that in the learning, teaching, and assessment sphere, within the territories, within the centers, within the use of AI, this is something that we expect to also be applied. So we did our consultations, as everyone you're seeing there in green, and the candidates at the forefront of what we want to do. This document is going to be available, in fact, on the website. You'll have access to it, as well as it is for effective use for the 2026 SBA submissions. So just for note that all the standards and adherence is for effective use in the 2026 school-based assessment submissions from those candidates. Last but not least, our CXC Regional Education Conference, as we mentioned just now, the longitudinal framework. Direct focus on the educational conference. It is CXC's inaugural conference, and we're seeking to treat with, as the theme says, navigating the digital age, rethinking teaching, learning, and assessment. This conference, the opening ceremony will happen on the 28th, and the conference will be held on the 29th and 30th of October, 2025 in Jamaica. There are 5 themes that we're looking at: emerging digital technologies, the impact on teaching, learning, and assessment, integrating AI in education, good and emerging practices, addressing exceptionalities. Remember, we have persons learning at different parts of the scale, very important. Transformative pedagogies, and of course, the whole bit of authenticity, interactiveness, accessibility, and differentiation where assessment is concerned. At this conference, we will also provide some behind the scenes for item writing, marking, grading. And it's very important as the territories join us, as we spoke about what's happening with math, what's happening with English. It's critical for our teachers, educational professionals to get involved and to be present at this conference that we're going to be having in October. Our commitment, CXC's commitment, is to contribute to the development of globally competitive human capital for the region. Thank you. Over to Dr. West.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manning. for your very informative presentation. So now we have heard from all the speakers, and we would have benefited from a treasure trove of content, which will be posted on our website. So please go to cxc.org to access the following publications: the CXC Responsible Generative AI Policy Framework for the Regional Secondary Educational System, the CXC Standards and Guidelines for the Use of AI in Assessments, the CXC Regulations for the Conduct of Examinations, as Dr. Manning would have referred. So we are now at that point where we pause and give the press the opportunity to ask questions. And at this segment, we're going to ask Dr. Wesley to lead the proceedings, as well as with our communications team here in Barbados, as well as in Jamaica. Dr. Wesley, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Sherry. And we have presented to you the strategic repositioning of CXC in several ways. All the documents, particularly the regulatory framework, as pointed out by Nicole, and the artificial intelligence policy will be available online. You can download those and begin to assess your own, make your own assessment of the value of that document. I don't want to talk much further other than to give you the opportunity right now to ask the questions that you have for clarification or any other issue of interest or concern to you. So media both online and in the audience.
You can see.
Who's monitoring online so that at least those on the side can.
There are
But
two
go ahead.
questions.
Yes, good.
The media house here from.
Right, Stockholm Network. Good morning to everybody. You spoke about academic integrity a bit yesterday as well. What I want to know is the why behind the CTEC, the new qualification. I'm interested to hear the why. There's some people who may think that you're lowering the benchmark somewhat, you're being more accommodating to achieve better results and so on. Can you just put that in context for me? The new qualification.
Thank you very much. That's a very important question. The new qualification is one of the concerns that we are seeking to address is that you have too many persons leaving the school system now without certification. And it can't be that students would have spent the better part of 18 years within the school system and end up leaving without any certification. So how do we begin to address that particular concern? And one of the responses through the Caribbean Targeted Education Certificate, CTEC, to ensure that students can, well, earlier in my presentation, I made mention of a learner focus now, where we're looking at the style of the learner, the rate at which the students learn, as well as the depth, the amount of content one can achieve. What CTEC is doing is providing a level of flexibility to the system for persons, regardless of their own particular circumstance, that allow them to either leave school earlier than planned or any difficulty in covering certain content. They can now manage that content over a period of time. And hence this certification, it's not lowering the standard. It is the same level of CSEC and CAPE, because CTEC will be at both levels. We're using the same syllabus. So we're not changing the standard. It is still the same standard. What we have innovatively done is to pull this out into manageable components as modules within a particular subject and allow students to focus on a particular module at a particular time. That focus will still allow them to achieve the full CSEC certification. Hence, Module 1 provides for stackability. You start with Module 1, and then you move to Module 2 and Module 3, and you obtain the full certification. But if for some reason you are not able to continue within the school system and you have to leave, you can leave with something rather than this all or nothing situation. What it is creating is a greater level of flexibility for students to be able to still attain competence in the area, because one of the things we are focusing on here, while content is important, equally as important are the competencies students can demonstrate and achieve. And so if you can demonstrate by looking at a particular module that you have acquired the competencies at the level of CTEC and CAPE, it must be certified. And that's what we are doing with the qualification. Secondly, we are regrouping the same syllabus in relatable and relevant content. So the content is not just there on the paper anymore. It is now related to a particular set of competencies and skills that you want to. For example, let's be practical here for persons to understand what I'm talking about. With module 1, there is consumer arithmetic inside there. If somebody somehow leaves school with module 1, they still have relevance to the job market, particularly if they have to go and work at the supermarket, because now they understand pricing, discount, simple interest, compound interest. They understand those things, and those competencies will be certified. So an employer will know that while you are still working towards the full attainment of CSEC, you have these competencies that you can competently demonstrate on the job right now. So that's the idea behind CTEC. How do we create relevance and relatable content? And how do we allow, for one, if you, for any reason, have to leave the school system, you have a basis on which you can re-engage. Because right now, as it is, if you did not achieve CSEC mathematics, for example, you have to start all over again to write the subject. Now, if you have completed module 1, you can re-engage the system at module 2. The other level of flexibility that exists is that a student might be pursuing the sciences or engineering or construction, and they want to get something in business, let's say entrepreneurship, as I pointed out earlier. They can now do that module in entrepreneurship and be able to apply that to their engineering field without having to do the entire syllabus for business. So that's the idea behind CTEC and why we are putting it forward as one of the solutions to deal with the challenges facing the secondary school system. Yeah. Hold on.
Microphone. Sorry. Rachel Agard, CBC News. In recent years, there has been a concern about the low levels of persons attaining qualification in mathematics. With this new CTEC qualification, will this also enhance the entire subject area so that we see those numbers go back up?
Yes, actually, so we are expecting to see a lot more improvement in the persons that take mathematics. But one of the things I pointed out earlier was the CXC Longitudinal framework. We are taking a research-based approach over a period of time to ensure that persons are acquiring the competencies necessary to be deemed proficient at mathematics and English. And so from the primary level, we are treating with the issue of literacy and numeracy, because if those foundational skills are acquired early enough, then obviously when they get to the upper level of the secondary school system to begin to write these external examinations, they are in a position to do so. And to that end, we have developed now a set of standards for literacy and numeracy that will be applied at the lower secondary school system, as well as what is happening at the primary level, to ensure students get the foundation required in numeracy and literacy to be able to take on what obtains at the upper level of the secondary school system in writing the external examination. So we think that the approach to begin to treat with numeracy and literacy at the primary level, and that's why I made the point earlier, that while it is important to allow students to be rounded, I think it is very important that it is not at the expense of being literate and numerate, but that those two fundamental skills are achieved from primary to the lower secondary. So when you get to the upper secondary part of the upper secondary section of the education system, you are now able to be proficient at writing the external examination CSEC. And from that throughput longitudinal framework, we're expecting an improved performance. Note that Dr. Nicole Manning spoke about the educational conference and the fact that once we are analyzing along this longitudinal framework and assessing what students have mastered and what they have not mastered, how do we now use that information to feed into the capacity development of teachers through our professional learning institute that we have, our PLI institute, as well as to the conference in bringing persons together so best practices can be shared, and we, through that avenue, have an improved upliftment within performance of mathematics and English.
And CTEC is open for any student who may decide to take it on at whatever age, because generally we start CXCs in fifth form, but there are some parents who might want to be ambitious and get some subjects out of the way before they go on to the ones that may be more challenging.
Yes, as is the case now with CSEC. I remember I presented advanced, typical, and individualized. With CSEC right now, students are writing CSEC from some as early as third form, right? So what we are saying, we are creating the level of flexibility and dynamism within your education landscape and the offering to allow wherever you are, advanced, typical, or individualized, you're able to still achieve the competencies required to demonstrate. So yes, persons can take this on as long as you are prepared, and that's a flexibility within the system.
Regarding the AI assessment, are there any contingencies in place? Like technology again, and sometimes we depend on it a little too much as it stands now. But are there any contingencies in place? For example, I sit down to do an exam, I start, and the electricity goes out. What happens next?
Go ahead, Dr. Manning will respond.
So for the exams, CXC, we do have a backup, meaning we actually have the paper-based exams for the May-June sit-in. But for the January sit-in, what we're saying is that it's twofold. One, you have the multiple choice component, that's going to be pure electronic. I'm going to get to what's going to happen there. And for the paper 2, that's the paper 2 or paper 3-2 component, that's done the hybrid. Now, what for the hybrid, once you download, there is nothing, no requirement to upload anything. So the candidate in that state where you no longer have internet connectivity, you can still complete your exam because you would have had the exam on screen as well as being able to complete the written exam. However, if candidates are not, and if territories decide or may feel not so comfortable with that modality, all the 13 subjects offered in January are also offered in May, June. Let me also add that we do have systems in place to grade candidates if it is that the candidates are not able to sit one of the 2 papers. As you would have seen, we would have done in previous years, like for example, with the breach in May 2023. So CXC does have a system in place to manage that.
Will there also be a whole education campaign rollout? Because I mean, you could sell this to me, I am fine. But we have students who are raised by grandparents who are not au fait with technology as we use it daily. So then how do you get them to buy into this whole new technological era? And more so AI, using AI specifically to get the work done?
So let me start by saying 2 things. We have been engaging parents, and that's why in the implementation, we're saying it's January. And let me first preface by saying CXC has been at this from 2017, I think we can say, yes, 2015, right? And we went a little bit further for a more direct approach. And the direct approach is not only to work with the ministries of education across the region, but also to ensure that we speak and work with the parents. We do have the experience, candidates can have that experience by using the internet. Now, speaking with the parents and guardians, you are absolutely correct that they too need to understand what is required. And that's why we place them on the website so they can have that experience. But coming up through the entire process between now and October, we'll be having several stakeholder sensitization sessions. We'll be putting it out there. We'll be making sure that everyone is comfortable. Actually, when we were doing this, we not only did the consultations, but we had to meet with each territory individually to ensure that just at the Ministry of Education level, first and foremost, that they were comfortable. You mentioned AI. One of the other things we had to do with not only the consultation, but we have to ensure that we protect our students, our parents, and our education system within the region. And that's why CXC would have been at the front for in terms of the policy framework as well as the standards. These standards, as you will know, even in the EU, that it is important for candidates, it protects candidates in the sense, and teachers, in the sense that they are required to do things a little bit differently. As you have rightfully said, anybody can go on and use the computer and come up with anything. But we then, to evaluate those competencies, we have to say, we are utilizing a performance base. How do you literally probably read to me, probably present to me, probably show me how you're going to execute what is required? It's the performance-based, project-based. We just have to do things differently. So this provides that guide and standards for the schools, for teachers, and for students and their parents to utilize.
And finally, are there any, well, I am assuming that you guys have all your systems and everything in place, because over the region recently, we've been hearing about all these breaches and hacks in various spheres. And CXC is not unique in the sense that it can't happen. Even personally, we get breaches and hacks as well. So do you all have all those systems in place to ensure that nobody comes behind the back door and gets into the system?
No, so our system, I don't know what to add anything to it, but okay, no, right. So we are good in terms of that. I will also say the candidates cannot get into the exams before the day of the exams. So CXC allows you entry. So you cannot get into those exams prior to.
I just want to add, you speak about security, and security is a continuous moving target. So I will never say it cannot be breached, but I will say we try very hard to ensure we at least in step with those who are attempting to come in, because each day there's an update. If you're looking at the screen behind, even while we were in this conference, there's an update, and it's a continuous process to try to stay ahead of those who come in. Now, while we may not be able to prevent all from coming in, if we catch you, you know you're going to be punished severely. So prepare for your exam rather than breaching our security. If you could breach our security, I'm sure you could pass our exam.
So that is the key code. The student who is logged in is the key code. Is the key code then unique to the student?
Yes, it is.
Yes, so you have the key code and the PIN that is the combination that creates that uniqueness.
We have a question online.
Hi, good day. Paula Lindo here from the Trinidad and Tobago Newsday. I have two questions. My first one is about the CTEC qualification. What kind of training will teachers receive to deliver this new teaching approach? And will there be assistance to determine what students can take which track, seeing as how many educational systems in the region don't currently offer these diversified learning paths? And then the second one is about the use of AI in the educational system. Are we thinking, or what are we doing about our students losing the ability to think for themselves? Because we've seen this happening in other countries abroad where people just use AI and they don't develop the developmental thinking skills that we should be doing at that age. And also, are we looking at the ethical implications using generative AI, considering that a lot of the models that are being used internationally have admitted that they have trained it on data that was stolen, basically?
Okay,
that's it
Eduardo
for me
will
for now.
respond to your first question, and then Nicole will respond to the second. Go ahead, Eduardo.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lindo, for your question. There are two aspects of teacher training that we are engaged with. The first is, as was mentioned, our syllabuses are being modularized. So there are discrete modules which would lead to each certification, each CTEC qualification that will be issued to students in the region. So as we roll out the qualification in phases, teachers will have to be trained to deliver this qualification. There are two aspects of training that we provide, noting that we are embracing a modular approach, and therefore we have what are called teacher orientation workshops that are scheduled already for those who are taking teachers of mathematics and teachers of English A, who will be exposed to the modularized approach and what that means for delivery of CTEC. Our approach traditionally has been through a professional learning institute geared to provide a regional workshop for teachers across the region. We've realized that it has worked to a certain extent because we've had undersubscription from teachers across the region, from country to country. So this year, what we're doing is we're doing a trainer type approach where persons who are in ministries of education and teacher trainers and teacher educators will be part of that process of receiving the training in each member state. And then every country will then schedule the training that we have designed to have it rolled out on an incremental basis across the education system. So it's what we call asynchronous. We design the content, put it on a platform. It's there for teachers to access, but teacher educators, curriculum persons are the ones who are now going to be in country, who would provide a face-to-face aspect to it to help roll out this training across the country with teachers on a scheduled basis. In that way, we reach as many teachers as possible, particularly for something as important as math and English. The second aspect is what we call competency-based education, because we mentioned before, we are moving to skills and competencies. And as we roll out the CTEC, our focus is moving from a more subject-based approach to a more skills-based approach. And so we are in the process right now of finalizing a course that will be offered to teachers across the region to build their skills in how they would embrace what we call competency-based education, how they look at teaching competencies and skills to students who they're interfaced with. So those are two aspects of the ability for CXC to respond through the Professional Learning Institute for teacher training. The other part of your question in terms of looking at how students are tracked and all of that, Dr. Wesley would have elaborated on our system, our literacy and numeracy approach, and more specifically, the longitudinal basis by which we track students across the system. What we're also working with is a more personalized learning model that allows us to use technology, most notably artificial intelligence, to customize personal instruction and to create lesson plans for students in the classroom space. So every teacher will have access to AI to use it for creating their own lesson plans. And those lesson plans will be individual, but also cohort-based. So every learner does not leave the experience of learning without having a targeted approach, intervention, catering to their individual personal learning needs. I hope that answers your question. Thank you. Then I have to come back here.
The particular component that is dealing with the students and students, as I noted before, within the standard itself, the document does treat with how students are supposed to cite, how they are supposed to the originality that will be checked. Of course, utilization of technology will also be checking that. We are also providing an assessment, an AI assessment scale that tells you the impact on the candidate's score or grade, whether it be the fact that you get no grade because you did not provide the citing, as is currently a requirement for us. So whether you're citing a human because of the work that they would have done and giving and acknowledging same, or whether you're citing the fact that you utilized AI, both are important as a part of ethical use of AI. So all of that is within the standards, as I would have shared. Maybe at the end, we'll make a few points in relation to what are some of the things we encourage candidates as they submit for the SB and as they also do their examinations.
Ms. Lindo, if I may also respond to your particular concern as it relates to students presenting work as if it is their own. I think a part of the standards and guidelines that we have developed is to encourage teachers to build ambiguity in the assignment. And if I should just give you a practical way of thinking about this, might be simple, but I think it makes the point profoundly. I took a picture of my Crocs and I uploaded it to AI and said, AI, what is this object? And AI responded, yes, it's a Crocs and it's a very comfortable shoes. And then I asked AI the question, whose Croc it is? And AI was unable to respond because it doesn't know whose Croc it is, right? Of course, because it has the ability to hallucinate, it might just spit out an answer in that regard. But the thing is, we are encouraging teachers, and in the policy, you'll actually see where we have asked you to build ambiguity. You have to also seek to engage your students in more one-on-one conversation now to appreciate the level that your students are at and be able to assess whether or not the work being presented is truly their own. It also requires us to rethink how assessment is done from a summative and formative standpoint. And it is important that we emphasize the formative aspect of the assessment where you are continuously assessing and making some judgment as to what students are doing over a period of time. And so you are not caught with AI being able to give a canned response to an assignment that is just summative in nature and somebody wants to submit the end work. So those are some of the advice that we have given in the document to ensure that student intellectual laziness or cognitive decline does not occur, because students will be stimulated now to ask the requisite questions or to be engaged with the content differently. And so we have to rethink how we design and develop our assessments. Trust that helps to address the concerns you have raised.
Okay, we have another question from Candice Castillo. Does the accumulation of all the modules automatically allow a person to receive the CTEC certificate, or does the person still need to take the CSEC or CAPE examination in order to receive the certificate?
Okay, that would defeat the purpose of us having them completing the modularized exam and then say go and write the full exam. No, once you are registered for your modules and you have completed all 3 modules, the award of the CTEC, the CSEC certification will be there.
We have another question by Robert Emmanuel online.
In terms of education reform, this has been hot topic by politicians all across. Sure, I've always had conversations with heads of government, large companies, conglomerates, in terms of assisting them, kind of furnishing the workforce the next 10, 20, 30 years. What kind of conversations have you had with heads of government across people to pretty much tailor the syllabus, the form of executives, this being done strictly your own in discussion with the guide, what policies, what kind of jobs in the future and so on, for having to understand what problem they.
Right. By virtue of how CXC is established, even at the governance level, it is made up of the government representatives from across the region. All ministries of education across the region, they have been represented on our council and in our committees. And so whatever we are doing now, I would not be making public statements without first having some kind of discussion with them concerning where the strategic direction in which we are moving. And so, yes, we have a discussion with the Ministry of Education on this and the likelihood. There are some governments now who are just waiting to start the pilot in September. I won't necessarily name them. We'll leave that for another time so you can come back and have conversation with us. Right? You know, but a number of governments have expressed interest in starting with the pilot. As you know, the pilot can't be rolled out in every country because we have to first make sure we get it right. So yes, we have been doing that. We have been meeting not only with the Caribbean Association of Employers and but as we enter member states, we are engaging the private sector, we are engaging the Employers Association, we are engaging the Human Resource Association across the region as well. We are engaging universities and community colleges and teachers colleges. We are engaging everyone on the development of this. You heard Dr. Ali spoke earlier about foresighting and labor market information because we recognize that for us to be able to prepare students for the 21st century, they must be able to apply that skill set across discipline because today you're in this discipline, tomorrow it's not. But how do you acquire the competencies required that we call it transversal skills, that persons can move from one discipline to another seamlessly. So we have been engaging all those critical stakeholders and we are continuing to do that. We are not just doing this locally, we are doing this regionally and internationally as well. With the international credentialing body, TICEP, looking at what CTEC is and what it means when somebody presents this result. Our universities across the region, what it means. We have asked the teachers' colleges to even look back at matriculation requirement because what is it that is really needed for persons to matriculate? We have been talking with the private sector and employers. What is it that you want in students when they come out? And a lot of it is not so much the technical skill. Most of it has to do with the soft behavioral skills. And you notice through the competency framework, we have now included behavioral observations and skills to ensure students are well-rounded now, not just with content, but with the kind of skills necessary for them to thrive within that business area. So yes, we are doing the consultation and we are continuing to do that. Parents as well, we are engaging them because we recognize that they need to know what is available and how their students will be able to achieve their full potential.
Can I just make some revisit point? I would just like to also quickly add to what Dr. Wesley said in terms of our engagements with stakeholders, the vital role of employers in that process and international development partners. CXC is nested within the CARICOM constructs. And so a lot of what we're doing is discussed not only with individual governments or those that are represented on our board, but also through the machinery of the CARICOM Council of Ministers of Education, as well as the OECS Ministers of Education. So there's a lot of consultation taking place there. And so a lot of what you've heard today has been presented to them in those fora as well. So they've heard, they've offered their perspectives, we've taken that into account, and we are designing as we go. We also have a ministerial summit that we host every year. And in 2021, we had our inaugural summit, and every year we've had a summit with ministers across the region. And that has given us the opportunity in 2022, where we looked at flexible learning and credentialing and what it means for the region, to hear from our international development partners, the Caribbean Development Bank, the Commonwealth of Learning, the Commonwealth Secretariat, as well as other international agencies such as the World Bank and others. We've taken a lot of that advice into account, and we have responded by putting our systems out there. The last point I want to make, and to strengthen what Dr. Wesley has said, we are engaged and have been engaged for some time with employers continuously. Of late, and I don't want to let the cat out of the bag too soon, we have had an engagement with a private sector company organization in Jamaica, but we are also engaging several other regional partners to create a system for foresighting skills and jobs. I'm not going to say more on it because you will hear more on it, and we probably have another press conference to address that issue. We recognize at the regional level, there is a problem with skills and foresighting and labor market foresighting. So a lot of employers and educational institutions that are national and regional cannot get access to labor market data that they need to be able to develop the curricula or develop the qualifications to respond to the needs. So we have decided we are taking the bull by the horns, and we've started that process. We've engaged 4 principal bodies thus far: the Caribbean Association for Chambers of Industry and Commerce, the Caribbean Employers Confederation, what we call CIRIM, which is the Caribbean Institute for Human Resource Management Practitioners, which is a body that brings all the national chapters for HR professionals together. And we also have an engagement with CANTA, which is a body that facilitates the establishment of the Caribbean vocational qualifications. And that arrangement, in addition to a private sector organization that is led by CARICOM, we are in discussions with them to ensure that's not just CTEC, but every other qualification that CXC designs and develops is responsive to the needs of the labor market on a continuous basis. And that's really the kind of arrangement we're working with.
Okay, Robert Emmanuel from the Antigua Observer has 2 questions. Recently, a local group has developed here in Antigua a Caribbean student-focused AI model. How does the CXC new AI framework and MOU help or take into consideration the development of regionally focused AI and potentially working with them to ensure that students have these tools? Secondly, what is the timeline for other countries to be ready to sign the CXC AI MOU? Are some of the more advanced developing in their AI policy than others, and which ones are you able to say?
Well, from the presentation made earlier, we have indicated that over 70%, approximately 70% of member states don't have an AI policy in place, and only about 2 or 4 of them, right, did have the AI policy in place. So we have actually contacted all and have made the offer to them to work with them for the development of their national policies. And that work is currently going on. As you can see from the signing today, Anguilla has agreed to that. There are others who we are talking to as we speak right now. But we have to bear in mind that member states are at varying levels of readiness for the digital transformation that is required. And so that the rate at which and the timeline they come on will be totally determined by them. But we have built the capacity and the capability to provide that assistance. As it relates to independent group working on AI systems and policies, CXC is not averse to institutions formulating or engaging in their own engagement with these individuals. The thing is, CXC as the examining body will provide guidance for that engagement, but will not ourselves directly engage individuals for the preparation of students. And as you can understand, the issue with respect to preparation and setting examinations and trying to keep those separate. But we encourage those groups to work with the Ministries of Education and the various schools, because some schools do have the capacity and capability to engage these individuals to provide that AI system available to them in schools. What we are doing with our AI system is to facilitate, complementary to the Ministries of Education, being complementary to what teachers are doing in the school system to facilitate students acquiring the competencies in literacy and numeracy. So our AI intervention is really at the literacy and numeracy intervention in terms of a system being made available to the schools. So where within country, there are systems that are available and ready for implementation, we encourage them to talk with the Ministry of Education and school directly. I don't know if
I just want to make a related point. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Wesley. Just to elaborate further, as Dr. Wesley indicated, in all our consultations with member states, we make it very clear that 1, we're not prescriptive, and 2, we are facilitative. And by being facilitative, it means our role is to really guide, provide advice, and to support where certain aspects of capacity building is concerned. We have our own networks and relationships with specific providers who are working with CXC specifically on exploring resources and tools available to us for us to position ourselves better as an organization using artificial intelligence for our work. In that regard, one of those providers is actually working with us currently to develop a teacher training program that we will roll out by member state. Those member states are those, I would say for now, who would have agreed to working on assigning the MOU to collaborate with us on that initiative. Because we cannot offer this to every single member state. Obviously, this is not a primary focus of CXC, but we understand the importance of it, particularly as you've heard Dr. Manning speak about the vital role that the assessment guidelines and standards would play in terms of assessment. So we need teachers to be able to understand and respond. So just to say that that is our approach to guide, facilitate, and build the capacity. And as Dr. Wesley mentioned, we encourage every member state as they go through the process of signing the MOU to engage with whichever stakeholder in their country with the capacity to support them. But we are also there to offer our services where that can be offered. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I gather there are no more questions. I just want to take this opportunity to thank you all for coming, members of the media and others, the Minister of Anguilla and the Permanent Secretary for participating in today's press conference in ensuring that we have a signed MOU on working together for the development of their national AI policy. I just want to say that we are grateful for the opportunity to serve the region. And as I indicated earlier, CXC is transforming for greater regional impact. And in that transformation, we will engage our stakeholders within an inclusive decision-making framework, ensuring that whatever we do is relevant and aligned to the government of the region, because of course, we are established to ensure that we facilitate economic development, particularly human capital development. So thank you again for coming, and we appreciate the time you have spent with us today. All the best. Remember, be cool, be calm, and be confident. You will do well. You have got this.